It's a beautiful day for democracy.
Yeah!
Mic check.
Mic check.
This movement is about democracy.
It's about democracy.
We demand that the government be truly responsive to those it represents. We demand an end to the massive corporate influence blocking the voice of the people. By eliminating corporate personhood. And limiting monetary contributions. To political campaigns and lobbying. This movement is about economic security. We demand effective reforms to prevent banks and financial institutions from causing future economic crisis. This movement is about corporate responsibility. We demand strict repercussions. For corporations and institutions. Who cause serious financial damage. To our country and taxpayers. This movement is about financial fairness. We demand tax reforms to ensure that the corporations and the wealthy pay their fair share in taxes.
And there are connections that we should make and be really sort of savvy about. Earlier this year, they toppled a dictatorship in Egypt by coming out and occupying Tahrir Square. In Tunisia, they toppled a dictatorship by coming out and protesting against that dictatorship there. And people just like us are fighting in Greece, in Spain, in Chile, in Australia, in Palestine, in Lebanon, for the same kinds of changes that we are demanding here. And it's incredible to see the flourishing of a real global movement for democracy and social change. It's been a coordinated strategy for the last 20 years of the people who govern the economy to destroy social welfare in country after country in the name of neoliberalism. They have gutted social spending. They have destroyed schools. They have destroyed healthcare. They have destroyed everything which makes life possible in this country. They have wrecked the planet doing it, and they have made our lives miserable in the process. And for no apparent reason that anyone can figure out, we continue to bomb Afghanistan and Iraq into smithereens, paying millions and billions of dollars in order to do it, in order to project and keep the interests of the rich in this country in power and continue profits flowing into their coffers. I think we have some real opportunities here that we should definitely figure out how to take advantage of, because the movement has really forced the corporate media in this country to pay attention to what those of us out here are saying. It is now impossible for them to talk about the banking system in this country without also talking about the people in the streets who are opposed to those banks. It has become impossible for them to talk about the economy in this country without also talking about the people who are affected by that wrecked economy, by unemployment, by homelessness, by foreclosures, the thing that economy organizes. And we've got some issues in Austin that it's worth talking about because they have a great deal to bear on how we continue to organize and grow this movement. Last year they closed over a dozen schools in Austin in the name of preserving profits in this country. They continue to wreck healthcare in this country by closing hospitals in place after place in Texas. They continue to make public transportation less and less accessible and less affordable in the name of preserving the profits of the rich. But what I want to say to you is that what today represents for me is how all of these struggles that we have been waging for decades in Austin and around the country are very closely connected to each other. And we saw that bear out in New York last week when the pilots union marched into Occupy Wall Street to declare their solidarity. We saw that in Wall Street when the firefighters marched in to Wall Street to declare their solidarity with the people in Wall Street. The Communication Workers of America has endorsed the Occupy movement. The Texas State Employees Union has endorsed the Occupy movement. The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers has endorsed the Occupy movement, and this gives us some real power in this town that they have not seen, I think, in a really long time. They've been okay with dismissing our concerns as irrelevant, unclear, indecipherable protests. Why are those people out there? We can't get a demand out of them. We will tell you why we are out here is because everything about this economy is organized for the smallest clique of people at the top and not in the interest of those of us at the bottom. We will show them what that means. So we have an opportunity really to begin to connect these issues and draw people in from all over Austin, because everything that matters in this town, there's a union and a person who works there who contributes to making this town what it is. The libraries have librarians, the schools have teachers, the bus drivers need to be out here. We got to draw some connections to this town, because if we're going to save it, the people who built this town are going to be at the heart of making this town what it can possibly be. In Egypt, they protested in Tahrir Square for a period of weeks while Mubarak and the military had a standoff and literally pummeled that protest into the ground. The decisive thing in Egypt, which changed the tide, was when union after union in Egypt went out on strike, and the textile workers, the tax collectors, the bankers, the lawyers went out on strike. And that's because there's one fundamental reality that they can't change, which they've been sitting on for a really long time, but which is our way to connect these struggles together, which is that as long as we have an economy that is organized for profit, we've got fighters against that system. Because every penny that they take is penny out of our wallets, out of our incomes, out of our education, out of our health care. We demand to get it back. That system has a name. That system has a name, and they're calling it by its name all over the country, all over the world now, and it's time we start calling it by its name. That system is capitalism. And it's time we start talking about some alternatives to capitalism, because the way that 1% got to be rich is not a mistake of the system, it is the way the system is organized. The way that the banks control the economy is not a mistake of the system, it is the way that the economy is organized. The reason that corporations are now called people is not a mistake of the system. It is the way that the laws in this country are organized to protect the rich at the expense of the poor. The way democracy is organized in this country is not a mistake. It is the way that democracy is organized so that the rich get their people elected, and we've got to struggle to get ours elected. We got to name the system, and it's time to figure out how we're going to organize against it. Call it what it is. The system is capitalism, and it's got to go. For you out there, any of you who are in labor unions out here today, we got a job to do. Next Sunday at noon, we are marching at the AFL-CIO headquarters, from there to City Hall to show our solidarity with the protest. Every one of us here has got to do what we can to turn people out, to make that a real show of force and strength in this country. Because when the unions get involved, you know we've got real legs under us as well too. 1,000 people today. There were 20,000 this weekend in New York to defend Zuccotti Park against the police. There were thousands of people out in LA. There are thousands, I'm sure, who were out in Chicago. 8,000 people in San Francisco came out. We're at the beginning of something really exciting, and it would be a shame to squander this opportunity. I think it's time that we begin to think of ourselves as organizers, really trying to figure out how to grow this movement and bring more and more people into it, because once we begin to understand that these issues are interconnected, the destruction of the environment is connected to the wrecking of education, is connected to the wrecking of our jobs, is connected to racism in this society. That's what the 99% looks like. It's the victims of the system. And it's time to get them out here in a very serious way and begin the task of organizing a different kind of society. One that puts human needs above profits, one that tells corporations they can go stick it, one that says wars and occupations abroad have nothing to do with our interests in this country. Bring the troops back immediately. And one which fundamentally says we are tired of being told to wait 4 years for change. We are tired of people telling us that the only way to make change is politicians. We will take change into our own hands, coming out into the streets, occupying over and over again until we get the change in the system that we deserve. Thank you.
First, they ignore you. Then they laugh at you. Then they fight you. Then you win.
I heard him say the revolution won't be televised. Al Jazeera proved him wrong. Twitter has him paralyzed.